So 20 years of Dragon Ball AF. Well, at least Toyble's Dragon Ball AF manga. The Dragon Ball AF phenomenon has obviously been a thing for much longer, starting in the late 90s following the end of Dragon Ball GT. And I don't want to go into the full history of Dragon Ball AF, but essentially this was Western Dragon Ball fans looking at what a continuation of the franchise would look like, with most people thinking of this famous image drawn by Tablos, which people would coin as Super Saiyan 5, but I think what really put a cherry on top of this whole movement was the start of Toyble's Dragon Ball AF fan comic. Up until this point, AF really just existed as isolated fan art and fan fiction, fake synopses, and so it was crazy for full pages to start appearing, and not only that, art that looked strikingly close to Akira Toriyama's own art. Even though the first chapter of Dragon Ball AF wouldn't be released until 2007, we would get a few pages from him in the form of the Super Saiyan 5 teaser back in late 2006, making this 20 years. I actually just recently grabbed a physical English version of the AF manga, obviously unlicensed, even more unlicensed than the originals that you could cop in Japan, but I mean, it's still a cool item to add into my collection. And at this point, I think it wouldn't be crazy to say Dragon Ball AF is linked to the franchise in a way most other fan comics aren't, because Toyble himself would end up working for the Dragon Ball franchise under the name Toyotaro, first getting hired for the Dragon Ball Heroes Victory Mission manga and soon inheriting the Dragon Ball manga from Akira Toriyama as sort of his successor. And honestly, you can see a lot of elements of Dragon Ball Super in Dragon Ball AF, specifically the manga version of the Goku Black arc. And not even just the obvious parallels between main antagonist Zycor and Goku Black, but also stuff such as the emphasis on the Supreme Kais or the return of what is basically the Mafuba used to seal Zycor. So if you didn't know, the Dragon Ball AF manga mainly revolves around the battle against Zycor, child of Goku, created by the West Supreme Kai, who apparently survives the fight with Buu and wants to claim stake as the strongest in the universe, as she feels like she was abandoned by her siblings and left to float for millions of years without help or rescue. So not exactly an award-winning plot in my opinion. Lots of fanfiction do this thing where the villain just appears in a canyon and all the fighters arrive to fight them, and that's really the plot. But I will give credit that they do a good job of making the actual fight more interesting, especially with Kibto Kai arriving to try and seal Zycor with the help of Gohan, which has some pretty satisfying turns. They do end up sealing Zycor after a fake out, which is kind of surprising because the Mafuba is an instant win that pretty much never works in the actual story. Though this time it's with the caveat that the seal is imperfect here and Zycor will escape in about a month's time. From an artwork perspective, is it weird to say some of these panels feel damn near iconic now? I remember reading this manga so many times online back in the day, and so looking back on it years later actually gives me nostalgia to the whole AF craze. I do feel like Toyble does a better job of maximizing panels in AF. I also found his art to be a lot closer to Toriyama's peak style here, but that's probably because some of these panels are actual just recreations of some of Toriyama's own panels. Now it's funny because you'd think Super Saiyan 5 being so integral to the concept of Dragon Ball AF would make it a core piece of this fan manga, but you actually never really see it, at least from the front, across the 4 or 5 full chapters that Toyble actually compiled. In 2006, he does draw a few isolated pages before he starts the full manga. This is kind of a representation of what's supposed to happen later on in the story, but he just never gets to it in the story proper. I mean, Goku does tease it for a second by briefly switching to it during a spar with Pikkon, but that's it. Goku never even makes it to the fight. And this is because Toyble basically has to cut the manga short due to getting his full job as a mangaka, with them more than likely being aware of his AF work. But some dedicated fans do end up taking his drafts for the continuation of the story and finishing up some chapters, so there is kind of a representation of Goku arriving to the battle. It's just not fully from Toyotaro himself. But I'll be honest, I'm kind of glad that the manga doesn't go on much longer. Like I said before, Zycore gets sealed, but it's revealed that the seal will break in a month, and from that point I just kind of checked out, because now you're starting to retread the same fights, with the next logical steps being summoning Goku and then the eventual Super Saiyan 5 reveal. They also start bringing in a lot more characters into the story, like Broly, Pan and Bra are a little bit more relevant, and everything just starts to become a little bit more complicated than it needs to fight just one guy. Now, Toyble wasn't the only one with the Dragon Ball AF story, most notable being the Dragon Ball AF series by Young Gigi, which feels totally opposite from Toyble, with more than 20 volumes released, and where I think Gigi has a great eye for action, I do think Toyotaro's work has a better grasp of Toriyama's humor and cadence. And as the successor to the manga, Toyotaro definitely gets a lot of flack, and I can't act like I think all of his artistic choices are perfect, but I can say his comics made a mark in the fandom, and I can definitely see why that might have attracted the attention of the Dragon Ball series franchise holders proper. So
I forgot to mention the ending. So it's all revealed that, everything that's been happening in the AF series is actually just a tale being told by Master Roshi to Goku Jr. and Vegeta Jr. or whatever. So kind of a continuation of that Dragon Ball GT final movie. And this makes sense as he had joined the franchise proper as an artist, but it's kind of a hard switch from kind of like the high octane action to something that starts to be like a little bit more heartfelt. You do this thing where you can see the next generation and Roshi dies, but not before seeing like all of the OGs show up and give him like good job. So, a lot of people were just like, where did this come from? It kind of felt like giving up. But honestly, this is probably the piece that I think most fan manga artists don't really handle. I really think this is what like solidified Toyotaro as kind of understanding a little bit of the heart of Dragon Ball. So it's cute. It was definitely disappointing to, me back in like 2012, but I think it was good on his part. And I think it was a okay way to end the Dragon Ball AF series in a way that, because it was abrupt, you kind of had to do it this way.
anyway, I just wanted to do a quick talk on Dragon Ball AF because finally getting it physical after so many years, it's pretty cool. Thanks for watching. I plan on uploading long form videos more regularly if I can, so stay on the lookout for that. And all right, bye.